The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this Friday night. I hope you've had a great week and looking forward to a fantastic weekend. I certainly am. It's my birthday tomorrow, so that's kind of exciting. I think it's the last birthday I'm going to be excited about. Next one is kind of entering I don't know, a different kind of ballpark of life. So I might as well enjoy my last year of my 50s, of my youth, right? All right. Oh, wow. Insulting me right off the bat. No, thank you, ER. That's great. Thanks for joining us. All right. I thought today we'll take a step back from politics, although, of course, I'm always available to answer your Super Chat questions, particularly so that you can do the Super Chat questions on YouTube. There is a Super Chat feature on YouTube where you can just put some dollars behind your questions, and I'm happy to answer them. I thought we'd take a step back from politics a little bit, although I will raise some political issues, and talk about objectivism. Talk about what it is and what it means to be an objectivist, and what it means to live a life based on the objectivist philosophy. What does that entail? What does that look like? I know a lot of the listeners to the show, a lot of you are longtime objectivists and have been around this philosophy for a long time and have lived it, and it's part of your life, and these ideas are part of your life. But I also know that there are a lot of people who listen to the show who are relatively new to these ideas. Some of you I know haven't even read Ayn Rand or read very little Ayn Rand. So part of my motivation today is to get you to read Ayn Rand. And for those of you who are already steeped in these ideas, hopefully this will serve as a reminder, maybe inspiration, maybe you'll learn something, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, to a large extent, this is for the newbies out there, for those of you starting out and trying to understand what this is all about. And much of the Yaron Brook Show deals with the application of objectivism, and we talk about some of the philosophy and everything, but I'm not a philosopher, so for me this is about application, and my area of expertise is not psychology, so I'm not a Jordan Peterson, so I'm not one to lecture you about applying these ideas psychologically or how to integrate them psychologically. My field is kind of current events, political analysis, economics, and things of that nature, although, of course, as you know, I dabble in everything else as well, right? But what I want to do, though, is, I do have an opinion about what it means to be an objectivist, and I'll talk about why I'm even uncomfortable about that. And we can talk about what it means to live that, as part of what we're going to talk about today. So this is not what I typically talk about, although it's always in my talks. It's everywhere, right? Every one of these shows has a little bit of this. So first, what is objectivism? Because I think it's important. Objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. There's a lot of confusion out there. Objectivism is not the truth. Objectivism is not the latest and greatest word on ideas inspired by Ayn Rand. Objectivism is not everything that is connected to Ayn Rand's ideas, Ayn Rand's philosophy. Objectivism is not my opinions about Ayn Rand or my innovations about Ayn Rand, true or false. Objectivism is what Ayn Rand wrote. It's closed in that sense. It's a finite system of knowledge. And you can include, together with Ayn Rand, what Ayn Rand wrote, you can include some of Leonard's material, Leonard Peikoff's material, but even Leonard would acknowledge that not all of it. So primarily, we're talking about OPA, Objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and as being part of the corpus that is objectivism. It's a philosophy that Ayn Rand articulated. And whether it's true or not, you have to discover. You shouldn't enter the project convinced that she's right. You can't exit just with one of her books convinced that she's right. You might think that she's right, but to be convinced, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. It's philosophy. It's not just fill in the blank. It's real philosophy. So Ayn Rand's ideas are what she wrote. And just to preempt whatever questions, she might have been wrong. Nobody who is an objectivist is going to argue that everything she said has to be true, will always be true, is like the Bible, written in stone. Well, the Bible's not written in stone, but the Ten Commandments are written in stone and always true and always valid, and nobody can ever question them. That's just not true of philosophy. New knowledge can be discovered, new ideas can come about that turn out to be true, that can expand on, innovate, maybe even show something about some aspect of Ayn Rand's philosophy as untrue. But I would say somebody who is an objectivist, somebody who's legitimately an objectivist, is somebody who has validated Ayn Rand's philosophy for himself, that to him, her ideas are true. That he has not accepted it on faith or dogma, but has done it based on first-hand experience with the ideas, with the world, with reality, tested them, evaluated them, integrated them, judged them, and come to the conclusion that her basic ideas, and not every idea, not everything she wrote, but that the basic ideas, the basic framework of the philosophy, the basic ideas within the philosophy are true. But that's not enough. The fact that acknowledging the truth is not enough. What really it means is integrating into your life and living it. Now, what does that mean? Well, first and foremost, it means, more than anything, it means taking her morality seriously, taking her ethics seriously, taking everything about morality seriously. It's the one area of your life that is in your complete control. And of course, that implies a certain approach to epistemology, but it doesn't mean you have to study epistemology and know epistemology. It just means the commitment to using reason, which is the ethics. So really, it's about applying the ideas in your life, which primarily means applying them in your ethics. And that will shape your political views, but that's not the essential. The essential is how you live every day. Whether you use your mind, whether you are a truth seeker, whether you are looking at reality and evaluating it. So being an objectivist means being committed to these ideas in your life, in how you live. Not just espousing them, not advocating for them, not arguing them, not being politically active around them, but taking the ethics, taking the morality and applying it to your life, not because it's dogma, not because you've accepted it on faith, but that because you are convinced. You have been convinced. And maybe you were convinced even before implicitly, but now you've made it explicit. In my case, it wasn't. She convinced me that happiness should be the moral purpose of your life, and that Ayn Rand's ethics, the values and virtues that she articulated, applied right, is the only way to achieve that moral purpose. That is, that you have dedicated your life to being a moral person in pursuit of your happiness. That is first and foremost, for me, what it means to be an objectivist. And indeed, I don't really care about whether people call themselves objectivists or not. What I care about is how people live, what kind of life they live, what kind of values they pursue, what kind of virtues they exhibit. To me, what matters and what should matter to you is to live a good life. is to pursue happiness rationally. And if you do that, these are the values and virtues that you need to live by. And then the extent to which you then, want to shape the world around you to make it possible for you to live the happiest life you can, how much you want to get involved, how much you want to think and engage in activism or politics or everything, that is to some extent optional. But the focus needs to be on understanding what these ideas have to do with your life and your happiness. And how to live them, how to apply them, in what context, and consistently. But again, all of that needs to be done not because 7 virtues are written in a book, but because you understand and you have internalized why honesty is necessary for happiness, why productiveness is necessary for flourishing, why independence. You cannot live successfully. You cannot survive as a human being unless you're independent. And each one of those requires real work. And I want to encourage you guys to do the work. Your happiness, in my view, depends on it. And doing the work does not mean listening to my podcast. I mean, I love that you listen. Please continue. And I think it contributes a lot. But the work means a few things. First, it means studying the ideas. Knowing what you're getting into if you find these ideas interesting, and if you find them intriguing, if you're inspired by Atlas Shrugged, if you're inspired by heroes, if you're inspired by what you've read by Ayn Rand, then you need to do the work to figure out how to apply these ideas to your own life. To understand what the morality actually means and how to do it. And again, in a first-handed way, and the work is not just to read. The work is to think. And thinking means integrating, connecting it to your own experiences, to your own observations, to looking around and seeing what's going on in the world, to what you know about history. And if you don't know a lot of history, study more history. I mean, that's just good advice for human beings generally. We need to know more about the past in order to understand the present and to understand how the future is going to evolve. So learn, study, think, integrate, observe, integrate, connect. And look, if you're going to study, then you should study primarily from the source. Start with Ayn Rand. There's so much Ayn Rand to read. There's so much of Ayn Rand that you could spend years just studying Ayn Rand, and you should. If you're serious about this, there's nothing to replicate the experience of reading Rand, reading The Virtue of Selfishness, the various essays, reading her other essay books. And then, at the same time or after or sequentially, however you want to do it, read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peacock, because it integrates it all. It shows you the complete picture of what the philosophy looks like, how it's connected, what the hierarchy is. Again, not because you need to know that dogma, but because it is essential to know that, at least in principle, not necessarily in detail, to be able to integrate the moral ideas into your life. You have to know something more about the epistemology and how the epistemology is connected to the ethics, and know something about the nature of man. And again, no, you don't have to know it to the point where you have to teach it. Those of us who teach it need to know it to that level, and it's hard. But you need to know it enough so that you can use it. Think of a philosophy as something you should be using. Ethics is a guide, it's a tool, it's a map. It's a map to living your life. It's a map that, in some sense, you got from somebody else. But unless you color in the lines, unless you go over those lines and make them sharper, unless you understand every turn and every twist, the map is not going to be useful because it fades and it goes away unless you constantly recreate it. And that's the integrating, that's making the philosophy yours. So, study, like any other field. You want to learn math, you have to study math. You want to learn physics, you have to go and read books on physics and take classes in physics. You want to study objectivism, read objectivism. There's nothing that replaces reading. Go take classes in objectivism. The only place to take classes in objectivism is at the Eichmann Institute or from Leonard Peikoff in some of his old courses. But take it seriously. Take the ideas seriously. And see, even on the questions I see in the Super Chat, it's all about politics. Screw politics. I mean, it's not going to change your life. I mean, it will, but it's not, you don't have any control over it. So many people live unhappy lives, half-fulfilled lives, wasted lives. Not because of Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or Hillary Clinton, but because of the ideas that they have, because of the choices they make about the life that they have chosen by default or purposefully to live. So the first focus you should have when you're coming to these ideas is on you, on your living. When I read Atlas Shrugged for the first time, I was 16. The thing that struck me, I mean, it certainly struck me that socialism was wrong and capitalism was right. That seemed kind of straightforward once I read Atlas Shrugged. But the thing that really changed my life, the thing that really brought meaning to my life and changed the whole projection of my life was not that. It was the realization that the moral purpose of my life was happiness, my happiness. It was the rejection of altruism, but it wasn't just the negation. It was the positive. That is, the positive of living a good life. And getting a clue. And the first time I read Atlas Shrugged, all I had was a clue. A kind of a hazy clue. That involved a whole ethical approach and a whole way of viewing the world and a whole... And I didn't know when I finished Atlas Shrugged how much I didn't know. How much I was still ignorant, to what extent I was still ignorant of the philosophy. But at least I understood that this meant I had to take my life seriously. That's the thing I got from Ayn Rand. And of course, I argued politics with everybody. Because politics is relatively, I say relatively, easy. It's much harder to argue ethics. Certainly, for me, impossible to argue epistemology. I wouldn't know where to start. But certainly then I didn't know, and I wouldn't have known then how to argue ethics. But it's the ethics that matters. And the politics doesn't matter. Look, if you get tomorrow, if we get the best imaginable president, we get an objectivist president. You know, we elect him and he's popular support and he can do whatever the hell he wants. And you have not integrated egoism into your life, and you are not pursuing life-enhancing values with passion and with focus, then what difference does it make? What difference does it make who's in power? You'll still be miserable. You'll still have a failed life. You still won't be successful. So anybody who views, just commenting to comments on the chat, anybody who views a president as your master, you know, you've got a perverted sense of your own life and perverted sense of politics. So you can imagine the best political system in the world. You can imagine the best culture in the world. And if you are not taking your life seriously, if you are not pursuing the right values, if you're not have a good understanding of what virtues, what actions you should take, then what difference does it make? What difference does politics make? And of course, if we have a terrible president, but you live your life to the fullest, and you pursue your values to the best of your ability, integrate these ideas, you might not be able to live the best life possible because this president, this political system, the people around you will interfere, but you will live a damn good life. And that's what it's about. It's not about the world. It's about you. So to me, to take objectivism seriously is to take your own life seriously, to take your own happiness seriously, and therefore to devote your life, well, devote a portion of your life to studying these ideas, integrating them. And to the extent that it's not working, somebody says, what if you fail? What if, well, there are two possibilities that you fail. One is that the ideas are bad or wrong. They just don't, they're wrong. They don't work. Because you're not achieving happiness. You're not achieving your own well-being. That's possible. I don't think that's right. They haven't failed for me. But, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. The other possibility is that you're not applying them right. The other possibility is there's a misunderstanding, a misintegration. Maybe there's a psychological issue. So there are a lot of issues that could prevent you applying these ideas as best that you can and still not getting the result that you want. But again, that's the work that you need to do, of choosing your values, making sure that they are life-enhancing values, making sure that they are the right values, making sure that they're in the right order of priority, and then pursuing them and achieving and gaining the rewards from that achievement. And if it's not working, fixing whatever's not working. Fixing it. So the whole point is to live the best life that you can, constantly building yourself. And how do you build yourself? You build yourself by the choice of values that you make. You build yourself by the purposes that you choose. That is who you are. You are your values. Your soul is the choices that you make. And your goal in life is to build a beautiful soul, a beautiful life, a happy life. So, to me, that's much more important than what you call yourself. But to me, that's what objectivism should mean to every one of us. This idea that life is finite, every second you never get back, you got to live to the max, and here are the tools that some genius has provided us that I can use if I understand them, if I integrate them properly. So, and by the way, it's not easy. It's hard. And it takes time. And I know lots of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, who give up. Who give up because it doesn't seem to work. Because it takes time. It takes effort. And it takes real effort to shake kind of the altruistic premises that we all have. We're all raised in a particular culture, and we're not independent on that culture. And you can't shake off all the premises you accepted as a kid and growing up and all the stuff that happened to you. You can't just shake that off all at once. It takes time, and some people just give up. They don't attain the happiness immediately. They don't attain the expected result immediately. It's too challenging. It's too much conflict. It puts them up against the culture, puts them up against their friends, it puts them up against their family, and they walk away. And that's tragic for all of us. Fewer allies, fewer happy people in the world, fewer flourishing individuals. Not good. So I encourage all of you, those of you who haven't yet, and I know there are quite a few of you, read more Ayn Rand, listen to Leonard Peikoff, take Leonard's courses, all of them are available now online. They're all available for free. Any one of you can study these things. Sign up to take courses at the Ayn Rand Institute. And to the extent that you think you need, in order to enhance your life, study these ideas. But always remember the purpose. The purpose is your life. And when you attempted to take these ideas into the realm of politics, there are a few things that you need to remember. Objectivism is not a species of conservatism. There's nothing conservative about objectivism. Objectivism is a philosophy that is radical in every dimension. Agree or disagree with it. It is not like anything else. Its arguments for capitalism are different than anybody else's arguments for capitalism. Different than libertarian arguments for capitalism. Different than conservative arguments for capitalism. Different than classical liberal arguments for capitalism. Its argument even defining individual rights. It's a completely different view of individual rights in deep, meaningful ways than even the view of John Locke. Because Rand's view of the role of reason in human life is deeper, more substantial, more important, more meaningful than Locke's. So Locke couldn't have had a full understanding of individual rights because he didn't have a full understanding of the role of reason in human life. So as great as an achievement Locke says, Rand is not just a follower of Locke. Her argument about individual rights is not just a Lockean argument. Rand is a radical. So when you think about her, particularly in politics, she's not a species of conservative, but she's not a species of classical liberal either. She rejects many of the ideas classical liberals held. So, in that sense, qua philosophy, as a philosophy, we don't have many allies. And certainly we don't have the same allies as we seem to have, let's say, in politics. Right? Seemingly, in politics, we're aligned with certain libertarians, right? Free market people. But philosophically, we might not be. Ethically, we might be completely opposite. So many libertarians, free market people, are religious, for example, and abide by religious morality, which I consider morality of death and destruction, anti everything I believe in, everything I hold dear. And of course, many of those free marketeers are moral subjectivists and epistemological subjectivists. And most of those then become anarchists. And there's nothing similar about anarchism and objectivism. They're complete opposites because their philosophy is so different. Anarchy is a species of statism, of subjectivism, of the elevation of force above all things. So, Rand is not just another, objectivism is not just another set of ideas within a particular well-defined tradition. I mean, you can say she's Aristotelian in the sense that she held that Aristotle was the basis, foundation for many of her ideas. But she disagrees with Aristotle in a lot of very, very important things. So, it is it is the case that we are going to be outcasts, separate, alone, philosophically, ideologically, politically, than everybody else out there in the culture. I mean, you can see that on my chat every time I do this. Even people who listen to me have no have no clue and reject pretty much everything that I say, and they come to my chat to let me know that. We have an anarchist who is not a moral subjectivist. Okay, then you're just wrong. It could be that you're wrong about anarchy, and you've just made a mistake. And it could be wrong about your moral subjectivism. It could be that you are subjectivist and you don't even know it. I don't know. I don't know you. I haven't heard the arguments. But you're wrong. It's just a question of where you're wrong. Are you wrong with the anarchy? Your morality is good, but you're wrong with anarchy. Or it could be that you're wrong with anarchy and you're wrong about your moral subjectivism. I don't know. That would have to be a philosophical analysis of your views, which I am not inclined to do right now. All right. So, all right, I've got a bunch of super chat questions. I'll get to those in a second. So this is the point. I don't think people should spend too much time figuring out who's an objectivist and who's not. I'm trying to point to he's an objectivist and he's not. I know lots of objectivists who I think live lives that are anti-objectivist. In a sense that they're objectivist, in a sense that they declare themselves to be objectivist. They studied all of Ayn Rand's ideas. They claim to pursue the values and the virtues based on what is written in objectivism. And yet they live rotten lives. And they behave in rotten ways. No, they live rotten lives because they behave in rotten ways. So somebody telling me they're objectivist means very little to me. I've met too many lousy people who happen to consider themselves objectivist. What matters to me is how you live. And it's not, you shouldn't care what matters to me. What matters to you should be how you live. I'll answer this question. Somebody says, is lying immoral always? No. And if you've read Objectivism, if you've read Ayn Rand, if you listen to me, you know that's the case. So lying is not always immoral. And the virtue of honesty is not about lying, primarily. It's not the focus. Right. So, what's important is, again, not about the focus, is not about the studying. The studying is a necessary, but not sufficient. What really matters to me and what should matter to you is how you live. Do you live a good life? Are you properly pursuing your values? Do you hold those virtues right? And the most important of the virtues, not the most important, the integrating virtue of all of them is pride. Do you have pride? And what Rand means by pride is a commitment to being good, to being moral, to being consistent, to living the best life that you can live. That's what should matter to you. That's what matters to me. That's what to me matters in a human being. They call themselves an objectivist. They don't call themselves an objectivist. Matters a lot less. Right? Now, if somebody's going to teach objectivism, then they have to know objectivism. If somebody's going to teach objectivism in the name of the Ayn Rand Institute, they need to know it, and they need to live it, and they need to believe it's true. But for somebody to be a good person, they just need to live the right life. And for somebody to claim to be an objectivist, I wish there was a way to zap the people who claim to be an objectivist who are not, who don't live it. All right, let's see some of these questions. Let's see if there are any questions related to what I just talked about. Where's that question? I saw a question. Jax asked a question that for some reason I didn't copy over. Okay, this is the question. Can you explain what it means when you say objectivism is a closed system? All the philosophies like that, all philosophies like that by definition. No, not all philosophies are like that. So objectivism is what Ayn Rand wrote. Ayn Rand's philosophy is not the truth. And maybe we need another name for people. Maybe we need another name for people who basically accept Ayn Rand's ideas but want to expand on them, want to improve them, want to tinker with them, want to write bigger books. It can't be that what they're writing is objectivism, particularly if they disagree with Ayn Rand. They might be right. Maybe she was wrong. And now what they're writing is correcting an error in Ayn Rand. That's not objectivism. Objectivism is what Ayn Rand wrote, true or false, right or wrong. It's just the name of a philosophy. So maybe there needs to be another name. I don't know, Randian or truism, or I don't know. Or maybe we'll name it after the person who discovers the fault and fixes it. But ultimately, I think there will be an evolution of a different name, right? Somebody is an Aristotelian if he uses Aristotle's basic, or if he studies Aristotle, uses Aristotle's basic premises. But objectivism means, if you're an objectivist, that means you accept Ayn Rand's objectivist philosophy as Ayn Rand articulated. Because it refers to a given name, the name given to the philosophy. Now, few people have done that. Because only 3, 4 philosophers in all of human history have had a system, a complete system. But let's say, I'm trying to think of a philosophy. Let's say we said Nietzsche's philosophy. And let's say we called Nietzsche's philosophy Nietzscheism. Right? Then Nietzscheism is Nietzsche's philosophy. And if you're influenced by Nietzsche, then you're influenced by Nietzsche, but you're not writing Nietzscheism. You're writing something influenced by Nietzsche. You're writing in his tradition, or whatever you want to call it. Right? Again, I think a name will evolve for this. So that's a sense, it's a closed system. The truth is an open system. The truth, right, is constantly being discovered, constantly being figured out. It's not static. It's not closed, including in the field of philosophy. New ideas will be discovered in philosophy that Ayn Rand did not think of. And some things will be discovered about Ayn Rand's philosophy that might turn out to be wrong. All of those things are part of philosophy, part of truth, if you will. But they're not necessarily part of objectivism. That's all. That objectivism is a name for a particular set of ideas, true or false. That's what I mean by objectivism being a closed system. Again, and not to say that you have to believe in everything that Ayn Rand said. Okay. All right, that was Jax's question. Let's see if there's any. What is the connection between rationality and courage in a culture and a man? Well, courage is not a major virtue in objectivism. It is a subsidiary virtue, I think primarily under integrity. And courage is a virtue in a context, in the context of a life-enhancing value, an important value, and courage is not necessary to attain every value, but there's certain values that might entail risking your life, that might entail actually needing courage, standing up for yourself and different things, right? So in that sense, it's like integrity, right? Integrity is the commitment to your values. I'm going to do what I said, but not just anything that I said, what I said that's consistent with my life, my values, my reason. Right? And courage is the willingness to stand up, even when there are important things at risk, and fight for those life-enhancing values. Not for any values, not for anything, not for stupid stuff, not for trivial stuff, not for unimportant stuff. That's why courage is not, I don't think is at the same level as integrity. You always want to have integrity. Courage you want to have in the face of a threat to a real important value. It's context. It's narrower. It's a narrower application. Right? So the connection into rationality is that if you rationally identified values that are necessary for your life, necessary for your happiness, you need to fight for those values. You need to commit to those values. And you need to be able to stand up to those who threaten those values. And the bigger the value, the more important the value, the greater the threat, the more courage is needed. Right? And so that is, I think, at a personal level, the connection. At a cultural level, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it means for a culture to have courage or for a culture to have rationality. Really, only individuals can have courage or rationality. I mean, culture is an extension, culture of the achievements of individuals within a particular place and time. It's the sum of those achievements. It's not something that can have courage. It can reflect courage. Part of the achievements can be that we're strong and committed and have integrity and pursue our values uncompromisingly in spite of great dangers. But it doesn't, a culture can be a culture of courage. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. All right, let's see what else is here. Okay, don't cultural boundaries give an individual meaning by his or her ability to transcend them. In that sense, don't conservative institutions serve a necessary purpose to those who think for themselves, since most people don't? Wow. Wow, I'm not sure I understand the question. All right, let's take this slowly. All right. Let's see, can I silence this guy? At this point, he's just a distraction. Let me just silence him. All right, we'll do that. Don't cultural boundaries give an individual meaning by his, her ability to transcend them. So, another thing, so I'm not exactly sure what cultural boundaries are. So, is tradition a cultural boundary, I guess? And then individual meaning by his, her ability to transcend them. So you gain meaning by ability to challenge the traditions or the constraints put on you by a culture. Don't conservative institutions serve a necessary purpose, the purpose being to challenge you so that you should transcend them to those who think for themselves, since most people don't? No, because I don't think, it's as if you need, in order to find meaning in life, you need barriers, you need constraints, external constraints, not unnecessary constraints, right? So if we lived in a perfect culture, then then you wouldn't have these conservative institutions holding you back. You couldn't break free. But the purpose is not to break free. The purpose is to be free. And conservative institutions hold you back. They force you to exert energy in places that don't deserve your energy. It must be better if those institutions didn't exist so that you could have a wider realm of choices without a fight. A wider realm of values without a fight. I don't know, let's take some examples. What is a conservative institution that presents a cultural barrier to individuals? What's a conservative institution? Well, let's say the church. Let's say the church exerts its cultural boundaries on you by getting you when you're young and educating you about religion and filling you with guilt and mysticism and irrationality and immorality. Immorality, which is what the church teaches. And again, we're radicals. We believe that the church teaches immorality. And it teaches that religion is a boundary. You have to follow these precedents. And then you, as a free-thinking individual, challenge these boundaries and transcend them. You abandon religion. Adopt, let's say, Ayn Rand's morality of egoism. Dump altruism. And there you are. This has given you meaning, the fact that you dumped religion. Now, compare that to somebody who grows up with no religion, who grows up with the right ideas from the beginning, who never has to deal with getting rid of altruism, rid of guilt, rid of mysticism. Who would you rather be? The person who had to fight, claw his way to reason and egoism, or the person who just gets it, who grew up with it, who for him, it's not self-evident, but this is how you guide your life, this is what you need to do, and doesn't have to undo all the garbage that this conservative institution has loaded it up with. Life is not about getting rid of garbage. Life is not about living up to false challenges. I mean, that's a very Jordan Peterson way of looking at the world. Or I'm sure there are other thinkers where the whole thing is you break free from the society's bounds on you. No, I mean, the ideal is to live in a society that doesn't bind you up to begin with. So that you are a clear thinker, an egoist, your values are clear, what you want to pursue, the challenges are challenges provided to you by nature, and that you can go out there and thrive without the baggage that the fight against these cultural institutions imposes on you. So, your self-worth doesn't come from the struggle against evil. The self-worth comes from the struggle to achieve values. And achieving values doesn't mean clawing them from evil. It means achieving values. It means working towards something positive. It means making yourself better. It means using your mind to achieve something positive for your life. And the fewer barriers there are in achieving that, a few artificial barriers placed upon you by other people artificially, irrationally, the better. So it's not about overcoming other people's irrationality or cultural boundaries or conservative institutions. It's quite the contrary. Those things slow us down. Those things prevent us from living. Those things make it take some people decades to get rid of the baggage that those conservative institutions have imposed on you. Ooh, here's somebody on the chat who came to me, discovered me through Dave Pakman. All right, that made my day. So now I know that doing the David Pakman show was worthwhile, because here you are. That's great. So, I mean, so that's, I don't know, there's something, and you see it in Jordan Peterson about life being a struggle against, for Peterson, it's against metaphysical forces out there in the world. But the questionnaire, it's like the fact that there are these bad institutions in the world makes us, the free thinkers, better for having been challenged by them. I don't see it that way at all. I don't see it that way at all. I mean, what we need to do, somebody writes this, Kyle writes this, I think people focus a lot on rejecting the bad, but don't focus as much as embracing the positive. Absolutely. Life is about embracing the positive. Life is about gaining the positive. Life is about pursuing positive values. Life is about your life, which is the greatest positive, should be the greatest positive, and making it the best that it can be. And life is not a struggle. Not in the malevolent sense. Life is a challenge. And the things about life that can be, certainly in certain periods of time, hard. But life is not a struggle. Life is not about suffering. Life is not about disease. Life is not about pain. Life is about happiness and success. And it just means it's not easy to get happiness and success. One needs to work hard to get happiness and success. But working hard to get happiness and success is fun. It's good. Being for something is not a struggle. Being for something is amazing. It's beautiful. It's fun. It's exciting. Right? So struggle is associated with pain. Struggle is associated with a negative. And I don't think life is filled with negatives. And I'm not saying there are no struggles in life. But that's not what life is. Life is about the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness should be filled with joy. Because at the end of the day, happiness is that sense of joy. That positive sense about the world. So joy. Be happy. Be successful. In this sense, I like Sam Harris more than I like Jordan Peterson. Because Sam Harris is about, I think he gets a lot of things wrong. Primarily free will, but he's about happiness. He's about living the moment. Now, again, I think his view of what living the moment means is wrong, but I like the fact that he emphasizes live, stop, enjoy the moment. Think about the wonder in you and around you. Focus on existence, on life, on the good things. So there's definitely this vast benevolence that Sam Harris has. I think he's got certain mystical elements, and I think he's really wrong on free will, which is a key. But Jordan is so negative about life that it colors everything else that he does, unfortunately. Right? Is Dr. Brook endorsing Zen? I'm endorsing that aspect of Zen that tells you, and I've heard Sam Harris say this, and I say this every other show, right? I'm endorsing that part of Zen that says, focus on the now. Doesn't mean you don't plan. It doesn't mean you don't think about the future. But the fact is, the past is gone. Use the past to learn how to have a better now. Use the past to learn how to have a better future. How do you use the past in that way? Learn from the past. Study the past, like studying history. Study it to discover your mistakes. Study it to discover your successes. Learn from what led to success. Learn from what led to mistakes. Look at other people. Do the same with other people. And then focus on your life, on your values. Now, and I agree with the Zen, if you will. All that exists, in a sense, is now. Right? This is the world. This is me. Right? One. That is a big number, one. I don't know what the exchange rate is. I'm not sure what ARS is, what currency that is, but I'll definitely get to your question. So, I have a lot of sympathy for that attitude. Now, I think it's way too mystical and way too passive. My biggest problem with Eastern religion and Eastern philosophy is its passivity. But what I like is that it, at least, again, as Sam Harris channels it, that it is focused on happiness. Not exactly the same definition as happiness as we have. And that it's focused on appreciating that every second you live, you'll never have again. Never have again. Oh, ARS is the Argentinian peso. Is it? Okay. Cool. It also means that 1,000 of them is not worth much. I know inflation. Focus. Remember that every second you live, you'll never have back. That's so crucial. I see so many people wasting so much time on analyzing the past and doing this and being upset about this and being crazy about that and why did I do this? Why did he do that? Why did she do that? The past is gone. Again, learn what you can, move on. Move on. And then people, the other side, and I'm much more guilty of this is my tendency, is to constantly plan tomorrow, constantly plan the future, constantly anticipate what's going to happen in the future. And sometimes forget to stop and appreciate the present. Appreciate the now. Yeah, somebody says the past is a sunk cost. Yes, and I'm a finance guy. The past is a sunk cost. We don't take it into account in planning the future. In finance, the past is irrelevant other than what you can learn from it. And that is true in life. And then, with regard to the future, yeah, plan, but also, somebody says, stop and smell the roses. Stop a minute. Appreciate what you have. Appreciate all the past planning that have led you to where you are right now. That's how you'll love your life, when you experience it. That's how you accumulate a sense of joy, by experiencing the joy. It doesn't just happen. You have to experience it. You have to slow down enough to feel it. Stop and enjoy art. Another area, aesthetics, where you have control over your life, where nobody else interferes. You get to decide what you look at. You get to decide what you surround yourself with. So, anyway, that was a long answer. All right, we got a ton of questions. No more Super Chat questions. Vonda, as always, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, love you. Your support is amazing. Thank you very much. Let's see, questions. Let's see, anything around these issues. Will you expand on Ayn Rand's statement that cynicism is naive? I can't. I don't know what she meant. To be cynical is naive. I have to think about that. So I can't off the bat. Let me put that aside and try to. I mean, some of these questions are hard, and I don't know. With all due respect, if someone agrees with and practices almost everything Rand wrote, and it seems dishonest to call them anything other than objectivist, that's fine. I'm not arguing that for you to call yourself an objectivist, if other people call you objectivist, you have to agree with everything Ayn Rand wrote. That's not the point. The point is objectivism is what Ayn Rand wrote. That's what it is. And you want to call yourself an objectivist because you basically agree with most of what you wrote, that's fine. I generally try to avoid calling people objectivist or non-objectivist, although I get caught up in those discussions all the time. Because I think the bottom line, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. At the end, it's about whether you live it or not. And the only person who knows whether you live it or not is you. Was Nathaniel Branden an objectivist all those years when he was a close associate of Ayn Rand? Well, you would have assumed so by looking at him and his full agreement with her ideas. But it turns out that he was living a lie, that he was never an objectivist, in the sense that he never lived it. He faked it. can't tell if you're faking or not. So only you really know the extent to which you're living the ideas. And that's the standard. Right. There's a lot of questions here. Okay, I'm going to just go by order. So some of you asked, Michael, it's a good question, but it's going to take me a while to get to it. So just be patient. We're going to go through all of them. Please don't ask any more questions because I'm not going to get to them. There are plenty of future shows where you'll be able to ask the questions. So live in the future. Don't live in the now, if that made any sense. You have talked about Scandinavia and Canada. What about Australia? A mixed economy as well. Does it have a freer economy model than the United States that the United States can follow? No, as far as I can tell, Australia is a completely mixed economy. On economic freedom indexes, it generally scores below the United States, not above the United States. But all of that is somewhat subjective. I don't think there's a clear objective measure of economic freedom. The economic freedom indexes are the closest we have to that, and they score Australia below us. So I don't know much about Australia's politics, but they have environmental regulations. They have heavy regulations on businesses. They're very similar to the United States in much of their regulations and taxes and everything else. So, Scandinavia. So I think Australia's got socialized medicine. So again, it's a mixed economy. An exact variation, a mixture, I think are probably more similar to the US than to Scandinavia, but culturally it's probably closer to Scandinavia, and from an economic freedom perspective, not as free as the United States. Can you compare Donald Trump and James Taggart? Wow. Wow. All right. Yeah, I mean, they're in the same class of human being. I can't, right, so they're both second-handed. I don't think Donald Trump has an original thought in his mind. I think he's completely moved by other people, and he's moved, like James Taggart, by what other people think of him. I don't think James was quite as oh my God, narcissistic as Trump. At least I don't have any evidence. I don't remember in the novel examples of him being quite as narcissistic as Trump was. He cares about what some other people think, but he's not constantly in a beauty contest, and not constantly appealing to the masses. Taggart is more aristocratic in that sense. He cares about what certain elites, certain people think of him, not the swath of people who vote for him. But that's part of the nature of being a politician. James is probably, they're both evaders. They're both manipulators. They both will use the system to gain their way, and in that sense, pragmatists. They both don't believe in anything, really. James Taggart strikes me as more evil, primarily because Taggart has in front of him the model of what life would be to be the opposite of him, which is a system. And I don't know Donald Trump well enough, so I feel like I know James Taggart more than I know Donald Trump, because James Taggart, we get into his life and his decision making and his interaction with somebody who's clearly a good guy. I don't know anybody good that that Trump interacts with who could learn from. I just don't know, right? So Greg Solomeo says, and this is right. So they're both the same. They have the same basic motive, right? The same thing that drives them, and that's hatred of the good, hatred of success, hatred of the able. And you can see that when Trump talks about somebody like Jeff Bezos, right? And really, hatred of reality. And their styles are different. But philosophically, they're very similar. They're very similar. And they both can say, Trump can say, make America great again, and Jim Taggart would say, make Taggart Continental great again. But it's meaningless. For both of them, it's meaningless. It means nothing when they say it, because they don't understand what made Taggart great, just as Trump doesn't understand what made America great. There's no, and they're both, their methodology is anti what made it great, anti-reality in both cases. So. All right, why do intellectuals scoff at the concept of freedom and individual autonomy? Whenever I present those ideas, they are seen as childish or naive. Well, they're viewed as childish or naive because that's the easiest way that intellectuals can indeed dismiss them. That's their way to show how sophisticated and superior they are to you, right? It's not an argument. And the question is, what argument do they make? And there are a number of arguments they can make. So many intellectuals don't believe in free will. So what does individual autonomy mean if there's no free will? And then many intellectuals have no conception, certainly no proper conception, of what freedom is. Indeed, among most modernists, right, among most modern people in the modern world, modern intellectuals, freedom is not what we mean by freedom. It's not the circumstances by which you can pursue your values, your rational values, where you can exercise your mind, which means that circumstances means the negation of coercion, the absence of force. To them, freedom means freedom from starvation, freedom from, who was it that says that a hungry man cannot be free? It's freedom from wants that are not satisfied. So the state of man who is completely free is that state in which they have everything they want. Garden of Eden, that is freedom, where you have everything. So they are conceptually confused, and their ideas are not connected to reality. And therefore, in their mind, their ideas are complicated and confusing and contradictory and don't add up to anything simple. And when you come and you present ideas that are simple, they go in a line, freedom is something in particular that you can clearly define and present some arguments for, it appeals childish, but life is more complex than that, they tell you. There are contradictions, and have considered this and have considered that, and their whole mode of thinking, because it's fundamentally detached from reality, from the facts, is complexity. And intellectuals, for a long time, I think, have worshipped complexity. And to some extent, psychologically, I think the complexity shields them from reality. It makes it possible for them to seem, in their own mind, to be too sophisticated to actually acknowledge the existence of reality. So they scoff at those concepts because they're too attached to something real, particularly the positive arguments for them. Right? Individual autonomy, but if you don't have free will, how can you have it? Or what about if you grew up poor? And maybe you have some free will, but you don't really have control over these aspects of your life. And, they can see all the complexity in it, all the difficulties. And some of it is legit. Some of us are way too simplistic, indeed, in our presentation of concepts like freedom and individual autonomy. Certainly conservatives and many classical liberals are way too simplistic and indeed naive and indeed childish in the way they present certain of their terms. And the intellectuals have a case there. But fundamentally, their complexity is a detachment from reality. They worship of complexity. Why do intellectuals lack common sense? What does common sense mean? Well, at best, it means a connection to reality, a connection to facts. But to have a real connection to reality, to understand what that really means, you need a lot more than common sense. You cannot defend you cannot defend freedom on common sense ground. You cannot defend personal autonomy on common sense ground. That's exactly what conservatives do. Common sense is just it's a straightforward factual attitude to reality, which is good as far as it goes. But when you're talking about more complex ideas, it requires more complex thinking. It requires more complex integration. It requires more abstract concepts. It requires more elaborate explanations. So it's somewhat understandable why intellectuals reject common sense. What's not acceptable is intellectuals rejecting reason, intellectuals rejecting facts, intellectuals rejecting logic. Now, common sense is one, if you will, application in a simplistic way of all that. But it's dangerous because it's not very deep. It's common. And what does sense mean? No, what common sense, you need, and Ayn Rand talks about this. Americans have common sense and they have a good sense of life, but what they need is a philosophy. And a philosophy is an elaborate system of ideas. There's nothing about objectivism that's common sense. I don't think, at least not for me. It requires really thinking and studying and figuring stuff out. Real effort. Real intellectual effort. Is it moral to be a starving artist? Well, it depends on what starving means. Literally to starve? Yes, it's immoral. Don't starve. Please don't die. But if it means you're going to be poor, if it means you might have to work in a quarry in order to fund your art, then that's completely immoral. Indeed, it would be immoral to give up, particularly if you're committed to your art, if this is really your value, and if you're good at it. I mean, you have to be realistic. You can't be committed to something you're bad at. You have to be good at it, so that there is a chance that you can make a living at it. Then I think it would be immoral to give up on it, at least too quickly. I mean, there might be a point where you say, it's just taking too long, and I'm not going to. It looks like in the world in which we live, I cannot be successful, and have to do other things, and I have to focus my mind, and I have to make some money, and I want to have a family, and I want to be. Then I'm going to give it up, and that's fine too. But you have to approach it right. So you have to be committed to your art. You have to be good at your art. You have to be objective about your both commitment and that you're good at it. And then don't give up on it. Don't give up on it. But don't starve. Find a way. I mean, again, if you mean starve is just to fill in for poverty, that's okay. It's okay. I mean, Ayn Rand was very poor in pursuit of her art. And so were many great artists. So were many, many, many great artists. Right? So, yes, absolutely it's moral to be a starving artist. Does the left believe they have defeated Ayn Rand, or they don't yet view her as a significant threat to their rule? I don't think they view her as a significant threat yet. And I think that's true of the left and the right, by the way. To the extent that they address Ayn Rand, they're still at the point of dismissing her in crude, non-intellectual ways. They haven't really engaged with her ideas seriously yet. And again, this is everything said here is both left and right. On the right, I think they know she's more of a threat. Because on the right, they interact and engage with more people that actually like Ayn Rand. So I think that definitely elements on the right, particularly on the modern right, on the new right, on the nationalist, more authoritarian right, that really do view Ayn Rand as a real threat. Because they read her. And they know lots of people who've read her. And they know she's had an influence. For example, the nationalist conservatives, one of their big agenda items is to make conservatism less pro-capitalist. And there's no question that they know that one of the drivers of some conservatives to be pro-capitalist was Ayn Rand. And therefore they view her much more as a threat. On the left, they don't know that much people. They don't know that many people who take Ayn Rand seriously. They don't. I don't think they yet view her. Now, some people on the left did. I think. What's his name? Hitchens. I think Hitchens viewed Ayn Rand as a threat. He mentioned her an awfully lot in her speeches, in his commentary, because I think he was intellectual enough and he knew enough about her, and he was exposed to objectivists, certainly in the debate with Harry Binswanger and Leonard Peikoff, to know that there was something here that he needed to attack. There was something here that he needed to reject. Yeah, I mean, I think they don't think they've defeated her, because I don't think they've really confronted her. The right is much more worried about Ayn Rand than the left. But both should be, because we're coming for them. Somebody asked, how is Leonard Peikoff? Leonard's fine. He's getting older. You know, he'll be 87 this year. Slow down, but he is still writing, and he's still engaged, and as he will say, between doctors' offices, he's still engaged with the world and still living a good life. So he's doing fine. The lockdowns, I don't think, have been very good for him, because it means he's isolated, and he doesn't want to be isolated. All right, will there be a lot of deregulation to reboot the economy if Trump is reelected? Also, what do you think of Joe Biden's comments about, if you don't vote for me, you're not really black? Will there be a lot of deregulation if Trump gets elected? Some. Nothing significant, nothing dramatic. He's already deregulated certain sectors. I don't expect much more. In the most crucial sectors like finance and healthcare, I don't see much happening. On the deregulation side, when things calm down. They just announced some new standards for regulations that should reduce regulations as we open up. The Trump administration has. It's very loose. It's very up to the regulatory agency. It can easily be reversed, and not very committal, and certainly not hardcore. I don't think it's that big of a difference. That is, I think, you could say he might deregulate certain things, but then he'll increase taxes on imports. He's going to destroy trade. He's going to build walls, going to incentivize companies to do weird things, like bring manufacturing back, so-called, to America. Those are disastrous things economically. Those will slow economic recovery down. He's already signed a if you add it all up, $2.8 to $2.9 trillion stimulus package, which is unbelievably destructive to the U.S. economy. So he deregulates a little bit. Big deal. Whoopah. So, what do I think of Joe Biden's comments about, if you don't vote for me, you're not really black? I mean, he's a racist. He's a collectivist, tribalist racist, as they all are. As they all are. The way they relate to the black population, people who are colored, is just disgusting. In this case, they take him for granted. They view them as a monolithic. But again, left and right are the same. It's not different. It's not like on the right they're better. But yeah, Biden is an idiot. I mean, not an idiot, but he has no principles. He's less of a pragmatist than Trump, but still a pragmatist. And just a nothing. A nothing. Now, I prefer his nothingness. I said this before. I prefer his nothingness to the big negative that is Trump. But, neither one of them could I get even mildly excited about, right? I mean, anybody who treats blacks as this unit that has to vote that way or this way, and who I benefited and therefore they owe me or whatever, anybody like that is basically trading in racism. That's a racist attitude towards the world. It's treating people as a collective, not as individuals. And it's pretty disgusting. And they all do it. They all do it. Okay, I was raised religious, and hardest thing for me is to grasp that was morality not driven by divine or social mandate. Was emotionally, and absolutely, most people are like that, was emotionally on board, but it was hard to integrate. Now I get it. But any advice for those who are new? Yeah, you got to work on it. You got to keep working on it. You got to keep working on the fact that there are no intrinsic out there values that you can just discover through revelation. Stop, particularly if you're in that group, stop listening to Jordan Peterson. He is not helpful if what you're trying to overcome is a dogmatic view of morality or a kind of outside view, a view of morality as being imposed on you with commandments and instructions to follow other people's well-being or another entity, God's well-being. The last thing you want is Jordan Peterson, in a sense, reinforcing that. So what you need to do is introspect. Introspect about why this is so hard for you emotionally. Introspect about what the challenges are. Are there any real challenges to your grasp of an individualist morality, of an egoist morality? To what extent is this just emotional? To what extent is this ideas that you have accepted that you need to undo? And look, it's not easy. It's going to take you a while. Right? But the more you understand the objectivity of values, the fact that values are objective, the fact that values can be good for you or bad for you based on the standard of your life rather than on external standards. An external standard is always, we are telling you this is the way it is, whether it's society telling you or whether it's God telling you. That there is a reason-based way to evaluate things based on reality, based on facts. But for that, even there, what are the facts that allow you to, integrate a morality? The facts are experience. The facts are observation. The facts are introspection and looking out at other people and seeing the consequence of their behavior. So you have to introspect specifically about that. What leads you towards a better life and what harms you? And not what other people say, not what you read in a book. What leads you in reality, in life? What based on your understanding, what based on your emotions? Is there conflict? Is there contradiction? Undo those contradictions. Work hard at it. I don't think they're shortcuts. Now, maybe there are shortcuts, but I think they're more psychological than they are philosophical, in a sense that maybe there's shortcuts on how psychologically to better integrate these ideas and get rid of contradictions. And we'd have to ask a psychologist for that. Okay, I'm working on a radical approach to computing using objectivist principles. It's rewarding, but unbelievably difficult to communicate, find investment. Are there any entrepreneurs who have used objectivism to transform their fields? I don't know. There are a lot of objectivist entrepreneurs, and you'd have to ask them to what extent they used objectivist principles specifically to transform what they do. You might want to talk to people who are entrepreneurs and who are objectivists and see what they think. I think this is a question from Upton. Write me an email and I'll introduce you to somebody who I think might be helpful in both on the fundraising side and on the communication side. So drop me an email and I'll put you together with somebody. How can objectivists beat alternative governments? How do we beat alternative governments? The only way I know how to beat alternative governments is to replace them. And the only way I know how to replace them is, there are only two methods. One is by convincing, both depend on convincing people that your form of government is best, And then hopefully that convincing leads to a peaceful change in government that then leads to massive reforms and a change in ultimately the system of government under which you live. Or secondly, a revolution. But either way, you have to first convince a significant portion of people that your view of government is correct. So how can objectivists beat alternative governments? By showing that they're wrong, by teaching what is right, by teaching the philosophical foundation of right government, because it's not enough to deal with politics, and by doing that over and over and over and over again, by learning from it, by getting better at it, and slowly convincing more and more people that they need to change their government. Governments are not these external things that are not connected to the ideas of the people who live under these governments. If you want to impact the government, you need to impact all these people. And only when you impact all these people will you change the government. Politics, to use other people's terms, politics is downstream from culture, which is downstream from philosophy. So politics is downstream from philosophy. Joe Rogan had Dave Pachman, and they had some very bad conversations about immorality of property rights, much else. Would be great to hear your critique at some point. Okay, I'll look that show up. Sounds like a good show for me to critique. I'm a millennium and bought my first house when I was 21. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't go to college. I went to work and worked my way up. It is possible for the youth to achieve. That is really important because a lot of you, I get questions from you about that achievement is impossible in the world in which we live. That is absolutely not true. Thank you, Yaron. You have changed my life. Oh, wow. Thank you. I thought there was a question there. But absolutely, you can achieve. The world has not reached the level of corruption where a good person cannot achieve good things anymore. And particularly when it comes to wealth or material well-being, I know a lot of young people who've achieved amazing amounts of wealth, even in this world. Hi, Yaron. What values an entrepreneur should have to succeed in life and business? Well, I mean, I say this all the time, but I have to do a show on that, right? But really, it's the objectivist values. You just have to conceive of them in the context of business. And John Allison wrote a book that has a lot of great material on this, about leadership and using the objectivist principle for leadership. But really, the values in life are the same as the values, the virtues in life are the same as the virtues in business. Life is about survival, so is business. Life is about happiness. You can think of the equivalent of happiness in business is profit or achieving your values, but that achieving your values in a business context means profit, means making money. So making money is the equivalent of happiness in business. It's not that you gain happiness from money, it's that they serve the same function. Right? How do you make money? By producing and creating a value. And in a sense, that's how you create a good life, by producing and creating values. What kind of virtues are necessary for creating that kind of value? Well, the same virtues as in life. You need to be rational. You need to be an independent thinker. You need to be productive. So very much the same kind of values and virtues that an entrepreneur. So if you study Einmann's ethics, think about then how it applies to business. And we could do a whole show on that, and I keep forgetting to do that, but I'll do a show on that. How the objectivist, I've done many seminars on this, how to apply the objectivist virtues to the issue of business. Okay, I'm now committed to doing some shows on that. I'm writing it down. Virtues in business. And then I'm going to do a show on that. All right. Let's see. I admire men who have shown great bravery and will in America's military. Does this fit into objectivist ethics, or is it a contradiction? No, I don't think it's a contradiction, particularly if it's in America's military, and particularly if it's in America's military while fighting for a good cause. So, and I particularly admire men who knew what America represented and why they were fighting, the idea that they were fighting for freedom, not just against an enemy, but for something. And understood that America wasn't just the place that they were born, but that America stood for something. It stood for liberty and stood for freedom and stood for individual rights. So the more the military figure understood what he was fighting for, the more I admire him. If, though, the admiration is just, the figure was just fighting because, hey, I was born in America, so I have to love America. Or they were fighting because they love the fight, and it's the fight itself that they love, the violence of it. Then I have little admiration for them. So a lot of, for me, the question often is the bravery for what? What was the purpose of what they did? And yeah, most of the men fighting against the Nazis in World War II understood that they were fighting tyranny in the name of freedom. And I love the stories about bravery and commitment to those ideas of freedom, even if they understood them relatively superficial or at a sense of life level. They're important values, and they're great to see people willing to fight and risk their lives for them. But when you see, as in many war movies, I think less in reality, but more in movies, the cynicism of the hero. I don't really believe in this. I don't really believe in the values. The moral equivalency, particularly in modern movies. I can't admire somebody who is fighting and being brave for a cause that is either a bad cause or a cause that they think that they're indifferent to. So for me, the motivation is very important in evaluating, in assessing my level of admiration for somebody. Have you watched the Medicis on Netflix comedy? I watched the first season. There's something about it I didn't like. I didn't like the way it was made. There was something about the way it was made. It didn't really flow. It wasn't that interesting and exciting. Whereas the period in history is like one of the most fascinating, interesting periods of ever. So I was disappointed in it. I thought I would enjoy it more than I did. I'm going to try season 2 and season 3 to see if I get more into it. And again, I love that period of time. So I'm interested in the period. Objectivism is truth whether one identifies as or not. Would one agree? No. Objectivism is not truth. Objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. I think it's true. To the best of my understanding, it's true. From, in that sense, it's true. But I also recognize that it's not intrinsically true. You have to discover its truth. You have to figure it out. Now, the things that are true in objectivism are true whether one identifies them or not. In that sense, yes. Their truth does not depend on you identifying them. Although their truth doesn't matter to you unless you identify it. I mean, it matters in the sense, only in the sense that to the extent you don't identify a truth, you can't live by it, and therefore it hurts you, the fact that you didn't live by it. Right? So that which is true in objectivism, and that which is true in objectivism is true whether you identify it or not. That is true. Being a Jewish person, I don't think of myself as a Jewish person, but okay. Being a Jewish person, do you disregard the achievements of Henry Ford and Richard Wagner because they were anti-Semitic? I don't, but my admiration for them as people, I do. So I can enjoy the music of Richard Wagner, although I understand people who can't, particularly people who lived through the Holocaust and maybe heard it in the concentration camp and associate directly with the Nazis. Of course they can't enjoy the music. It's horror for them. So I can appreciate the music, but I can't appreciate Richard Wagner. And the same with Henry Ford. Again, I can appreciate the virtues in Henry Ford. It's not just his cause. I can appreciate the genius of the man. And then I properly evaluate him as to the extent that he was anti-Semitic as anti-Semitic. So I definitely appreciate their achievements. Right? Now, there's no question that there's a certain level of evil where your achievements don't matter. Now, it's also true that when you reach that level of evil, there cannot really be any achievements. Take Hitler. If Hitler was a great painter, there's no way I would appreciate the painting. Now, part of why he was Hitler was he wasn't a great painter. Or he wasn't a great painter partially because, I don't know if you know, but Hitler painted. Because he was Hitler. Right? You can't really divorce the nature of the man, if he's that evil, from any achievement. But if he had accidentally or by some ways or before had achieved something significant, I would not have any appreciation for it because of the degree of evil that he represented. While Wagner's anti-Semitism and Henry Ford's anti-Semitism are bad, it's not enough, or evil. It's not enough for me to dismiss them completely and ignore the fact that they had significant achievements. Right? And their anti-Semitism was bounded. It didn't manifest itself in concentration camps and the killing of 6 million people. Right? All right. Yeah, I mean, Wagner hated Mendelssohn because he was Jewish, and partially because of the music, because Wagner thought he had above and beyond, had moved beyond Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn was primitive as compared to Wagner, and Wagner was problematic, and he was not a nice person. He was problematic in many respects. He was a nasty human being. He often made promises and broke them. He often had to hide from creditors. He was not a good, honorable human being. And he wrote great music, All right. MH says he prefers Mendelssohn over Wagner. I do for the most part as well. But I can appreciate Wagner. And certain things that Wagner wrote are truly magnificent. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. Wow, we've got an hour and 40 minutes. Don't forget, if you enjoy these shows, to support them. Thank you for those of you who supported the show through the Super Chat. Thank you for those of you who support the show with our regular monthly contribution. Those are incredibly helpful, because they allow me to plan and I know exactly what's coming. And thank you for those who support me on all the different platforms. And finally, thanks for sharing and thanks for liking the shows, and keep coming back. Tomorrow, no show. It's my birthday. Taking the day off, having a nice dinner. Can't go to a restaurant, so I'm bringing the restaurant home. Bringing the chef, and he's coming to my house, and he's preparing my wife and my favorite dishes, and we're going to eat them at home. So hopefully by next birthday, we will be able to go to a restaurant, or hopefully sooner than that, hopefully next week. So I will be celebrating tomorrow. I will see you all on Sunday at, I know we have a time for this. We already have a time. It's Sunday at Open Sesame. Why is my calendar not opening? There it is. Sunday at 3 p.m. We have the monthly hangout with my $100 members. If you contribute $100 monthly to the show or more, then you can join me in a Zoom video that is then streamed to everybody, but you will be Zoom video with me. You can ask any questions you want. We can have a conversation. That is at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. 3, not 13, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which means 15 Eastern Time. 15 Eastern Time, right here, same place. And we will be Zooming with anybody, those of you who contribute more than $100 a month to the Yaron Brook Show. I'll see Jennifer there, and I'll see several others. And those of you who give that kind of amount, like, Vonda is certainly welcome. Just sign up. You have, I'm sure you got an email from my assistant, from Angela, who is giving you all the information. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you on Sunday, and then we'll go back to regular shows next week. All right, and I'll do something on virtues in business. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. I intend to enjoy my birthday. Bye.